every person who is inside the detention facility is trying to free themselves. And it wouldn't be right for us to gather here today while there's a genocide going on in Gaza and not talk about that. And we understand the connections between the two. We know that the same companies that are profiting from the bombs that are dropping in Palestine are the same companies that are profiting from the militarization of our border, that are the same companies that are profiting from the transportation of people through deportation and shuffling them around the country from one facility to another. We understand these connections. We understand the dehumanizing language that is used against people in detention everywhere, whether they're in detention here or they're in detention in the West Bank, or whether they're kidnapped off the streets of Gaza. The same degrading, humiliating treatment that occurs to the people inside this detention center and all of our detention centers and at our borders is the same humiliating, degrading treatment that is happening every day to everyone who is Palestinian. So, in honor of the indigenous people of Palestine and in honor of the indigenous people of New Jersey, I would like to read a land acknowledgement. The land upon which we stand is part of the traditional territory of the Lenni Lenape, called Lenapehoking. The Lenape people have lived in this territory for thousands of years. We recognize their struggle to keep community and culture alive, first through disease, brought when first contact was made with Europeans, and then through harassment, displacement, and violent and deadly attacks by European settlers. During the colonial era and early federal period, many were removed first to a reservation in New Jersey and then further and further westward. Some have remained and lived in the tribal communities of this region, the Nanticoke Lenni Lenape tribal nation, the Ramapo Lenape nation, the Powhatan Lenape nation, and the Lenape Indian tribe of Delaware. We also recognize the forced diaspora of the Delaware tribe of Indians in Oklahoma and Ontario, and the Stockbridge Munsee Band of Mohican Indians in Wisconsin. The organizations and the individuals gathered here today acknowledge the Lenni Lenape as the original people of this land, their continuing relationship with this territory, and their ongoing struggle to maintain their culture and their community. No matter what, the human spirit cannot be conquered. The human spirit will always triumph. On the ground here, we have a banner that says, "You cannot detain our spirit," and that is from a spoken word piece that was written for us over 10 years ago by one of the peace poets, Frank Lopez. In the vases here, you'll notice if you look closely that there's barbed wire, but the flowers are still beautiful, even through the danger and the violence that the barbed wire threatens. And you'll see we have two kites here, and kites are symbolic of freedom. They are symbolic of freedom and they are symbolic of resistance. They are used in protest and resistance throughout the world, everywhere from Afghanistan to Washington State, where they fly them high over the fence so that when people are outside of ICE detention and recreation, that they can see them. These particular kites have lines from a poem from from a very famous Palestinian academic, scholar, and poet, Rifat Alamir, who was just murdered in what many believe was a targeted missile strike on his sister's home. This was just this past Wednesday, December 7th. He knew that he was being targeted because he was doxxed and called out by powerful people in the media in the West, specifically in the United States. And he posted this on November 1st. And he sat with this feeling, knowing that he would die. If I must die, you must live to tell my story. To sell my things, to buy a piece of cloth and some strings. Make it white with a long tail, so that a child somewhere in Gaza, while looking heaven in the eye, awaiting his dad who left in a blaze, and bid no one farewell, not even to his flesh, not even to himself. Sees the kite, my kite you made, flying up above, and thinks for a moment, an angel is there, bringing back love. If I must die, let it bring hope, let it be a tale. Rifat knew that his most powerful weapon was his pen and the stories that he had to tell and that other Palestinians had to tell. And what he did was he trained other people to tell stories as well. And that is what we do here. And that is why you will hear today from people who have been inside, people who have had loved ones who are inside, because their stories are what rehumanize them. Their stories are what are powerful. Their stories are what, hopefully, will break open the hearts of the powerful and let them live.